The Black Dahlia. In 1947, a brutal and enigmatic homicide in the center of Los Angeles stunned post-war America. A young woman's corpse was discovered in an empty lot, cut in two and gruesomely mutilated. She would become the Black Dahlia, a title that became synonymous with unresolved mysteries and sinister secrets. Despite a thorough inquiry by the police and FBI, the murder of the Black Dahlia remains one of the most notorious and mysterious in American history. The case has inspired many books, films, and television programs, and has captivated true crime enthusiasts and amateur detectives for more than 7 decades. In this video, we will delve into the enigma surrounding the murder of the Black Dahlia, examining the various hypotheses and suspects, and trying to discover the truth behind one of the most unsettling and perplexing crimes of the 20th century. Betty Berzinger, out walking with her young child in Los Angeles on the morning of January 15, 1947, made a gruesome discovery in a vacant lot. A young woman's corpse was discovered on the ground, severed in half at the midsection and devoid of all blood. Medical examiners determined that she had been dead for approximately 10 hours before her discovery, placing her death time between January 14th evening and January 15th early morning. The killer had also evidently cleaned the body. The murdered woman was identified after her fingerprints were transmitted to the Federal Bureau of Investigation via sound photo, a device that transmitted images via telephone. Investigators could now put a name to the body due to fingerprints from a 1943 arrest. Elizabeth Short was the Black Dahlia. Aggie Underwood, a reporter for the Los Angeles Herald-Express, was among the first to appear on the scene and captured several photographs of the body and crime scene. The gruesome details of the crime, including the fact that Short's corpse was meticulously cleansed and posed, led investigators to conclude that the perpetrator possessed a certain level of medical knowledge or experience. Her face had been mutilated to resemble a Glasgow smile, with her mouth slashed wide from ear to ear. Due to the media circus and gruesome details of the crime, investigators were hard-pressed to find a culprit, and quickly. Initially, 750 investigators from the LAPD and other departments, including 400 sheriff's deputies and 250 California State Patrol officers, worked on the investigation. Numerous locations, including storm drains throughout Los Angeles, abandoned structures, and various sites along the Los Angeles River, were examined for potential evidence, but no other evidence was discovered. Lloyd G. Davis, a city alderman, offered a $10,000 reward, equivalent to $122,000 in 2021, for information leading police to Short's murderer. After the announcement of the reward, several people came forward with confessions, the majority of which were believed fraudulent by the police. Several of the false confessors later faced obstruction of justice charges. Over the years, the notoriety of the Short murder has prompted a large number of confessions, many of which have been considered fraudulent. During the initial investigation into her murder, police received 60 confessions. Since then, over 500 individuals have confessed to the crime, some of whom were not even born when she was murdered. Numerous suspects have been put forward as the Black Dahlia killer over the years. These suspects included Robert Manley. Robert Manley was a salesman who had been seen with Elizabeth Short in the days before her murder. Joseph Dumais. Joseph Dumais was a soldier who had been stationed in Los Angeles at the time of the Black Dahlia murder. Norman Chandler. Norman Chandler was the publisher of the Los Angeles Times and was rumored to have been involved in the Black Dahlia murder and rumored to have impregnated her. Mark Gorin. Mark Gorin was a friend of Elizabeth Short's and was known to have had a relationship with her. Red Manley. Red Manley was a married man who had been seen with Elizabeth Short in San Diego just days before her murder. Leslie Dillon. Leslie Dillon was a bellhop who was questioned by the police after his girlfriend reported that he had made incriminating statements about the Black Dahlia murder. Dillon denied any involvement in the crime and was eventually released due to a lack of evidence. Mark Hansen. Mark Hansen was a wealthy nightclub owner who was known to have had a relationship with Elizabeth Short. Jack Anderson Wilson. Jack Anderson Wilson was a convicted rapist who was known to have been in the Los Angeles area at the time of the Black Dahlia murder. Carl Balsiger. Carl Balsiger was a postal worker who had been seen with Elizabeth Short before her murder. Fred Sexton. Fred Sexton was a photographer who had been seen with Elizabeth Short in the days before her murder. Two suspects are conspicuously absent from this list: Walter Bailey and George Hodel. Pinned as two of the most likely suspects, we would like you, our BT crew, to give us an opinion on who, out of these two suspects, could have been the Black Dahlia killer in the comments section after viewing the evidence against them. Larry Harnish, a former copy editor and writer for the Los Angeles Times, suggested Walter Bailey as a possible murderer of Elizabeth Short. To commemorate the 50th anniversary of Short's murder, Harnish, who was unfamiliar with the case, was instructed by his editor to write an article on the case. He became so captivated by the case that his research never stopped and is now arguably the most authoritative voice on the case, having debunked many myths and lies that had persisted over the years. A conversation with the legendary FBI profiler John Douglas prompted Harnish to investigate the location where Short's body was discovered in greater detail. Douglas believed the murderer had a personal connection to the scene. His initial research yielded few results, but this quickly changed. Among the items sent to Harnish by a case enthusiast was Short's sister's marriage certificate. Here, Harnish discovered his first connection to the crime scene. One of the witnesses listed their address as Norton Avenue, which was only 1 block from where Short was discovered. The name of the witness was Barbara Lindgren. Harnish discovered that the address belonged to Barbara Lindgren's parents, Ruth and Walter Bailey. Harnish became interested in Walter Bailey as soon as he learned that he was a surgeon, undoubtedly competent enough to perform the bisection on Short. Harnish also discovered that Bailey's office was in the same vicinity as the Biltmore Hotel, where Short was last seen alive. Walter Bailey passed away in 1948, a year after the murder. At the time of his death, Bailey was suffering from encephalomalacia, a very severe neurological disorder, according to his autopsy results. This disorder can result in a drastic alteration of behavior, including violence. Before his death, Bailey undoubtedly exhibited changes in personality. After many years of marriage, he abandoned the family residence after beginning an affair with a co-worker, and several individuals, including colleagues, his secretary, and his daughter Barbara, who knew Bailey, were able to corroborate a change in personality. Harnish hypothesizes that Short may have contacted Barbara to look for a place to stay, as she regularly did, on the advice of her sister or her sister's spouse, but she was only able to find Walter Bailey. Elizabeth may have used the pretense of a sad tale to gain Walter's sympathy, which ultimately backfired. Elizabeth had allegedly lied before about having a deceased son in the past when she was searching for a place to stay or to get a drink out of a man. Bailey, however, had actually experienced such a tragedy. His son was killed on January 13, 1920, when he was struck by a vehicle. Harnish hypothesizes that he eventually realized that Short was lying, snapped, and murdered her on the anniversary of his son's death. Bailey then cut the body in half and deposited it in an area close to where his son had died 17 years prior. Ruth, Walter Bailey's widow, contested her husband's will after his passing. Her claim stated that her husband's lover had threatened to disclose a dreadful secret if he returned to his wife. Could this secret have had a connection to the Black Dahlia case? George Hodel was a native of Los Angeles. He was an extremely bright young man who accomplished the feat of graduating from high school in 1922 at the age of 15 and then enrolling in the California Institute of Technology. At the age of 16, he was expelled after it was discovered that he was having an affair with the wife of his professor and had gotten her pregnant. He had a son with a woman named Amelia when he was 21 years old, but by the 1930s he was married to Dorothy Anthony. In 1932, he returned to school to pursue medicine, first at Berkeley and then at the University of California, San Francisco, where he graduated in 1936 with a medical degree. Hodel was a successful physician who lived in one of Los Angeles' wealthiest neighborhoods. He was well known in the surrealist art community as well as in the party and S&M communities. In 1940, while still married to Dorothy, Hodel married the ex-wife of a close acquaintance, Dorothy Harvey. In 1945, he bought one of the renowned Frank Lloyd Wright properties in the city and moved in with his new wife and 3 children. Hodel was well known for his fleeting relationships and sadomasochism, as were many of his acquaintances. It does not appear that George Hodel's polygamy played a significant role in his inclusion on the suspect list for the murder of Short. However, in 1949, his daughter Tamar brought Hodel to the attention of the law. In 1949, Tamar Hodel publicly accused her father of sexually assaulting her, alleging that he forced himself on her and forced her to read erotica in order to make me a sexual goddess. He was charged with incestuous sexual abuse against Tamar. 2 witnesses, including another Black Dahlia suspect, Fred Sexton, testified against George Hodel and told the jury that they had seen him sexually assaulting his daughter. A 3rd witness for the prosecution recanted her testimony and refused to testify. Tamar also allegedly stated during the trial that her father was the Black Dahlia killer. Hodel's defense team relied on a smear campaign against Tamar Hodel to win the case, alleging, among other things, that she was an attention-seeking liar. The jury believed him, and Hodel's charges were dismissed. However, while investigating the murder of Short, the police took an interest in Hodel for a variety of reasons. His charges had placed him on a list of sex offenders in the area where she was discovered. Secondly, Hodel was a well-respected surgeon with knowledge of surgical procedures, and the Black Dahlia's gruesome, precise wounds suggested that someone with medical knowledge had committed the murder. In addition, at least 8 witnesses claimed first-hand knowledge of Short and Hodel's relationship in 1946. In 1950, there was sufficient evidence to bug Hodel's residence. The police captured Hodel saying, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia, they can't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary anymore because she's dead. They thought there was something fishy. Anyway, now they may have figured it out. Killed her. Maybe I did kill my secretary." This confession of sorts was seen as a taunt, as police suspect that Hodel knew that his home was bugged. Even though he was one of the top 5 suspects, Hodel was never formally accused with Elizabeth Short's homicide. Steve Hodel, a former LAPD detective, launched his own investigation of his father after his death. A photo album was discovered while rummaging through his father's possessions. At the back of the album was a photograph of a woman who resembled Elizabeth Short. After nearly 2 decades of investigation, Hodel discovered what he believes to be evidence that his father murdered not only Short, but also other women too. The overwhelming degree of ambiguity surrounding the case is one of the reasons why it has remained so popular. The killer's identity and motive for the crime remain unknown to this day. Some believe that the murder was the result of a larger conspiracy, while some believe it was the work of a lone sociopath. The Black Dahlia murder has become a cultural touchstone and serves as a haunting reminder that darkness can linger beneath the surface of even the most opulent and vibrant cities. Leave us a comment on who you think the Black Dahlia killer is. Is it Bailey or Hodel?